All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to tackle a huge topic, modern conflict. We're going to break down what it is, how it really starts, and maybe most importantly, why it affects every single one of us, no matter where we happen to live. So, let's get to it. I mean, you've felt this, right? You open your phone, you turn on the TV, and bam, it feels like the world is just in this constant state of crisis. It is so easy to feel completely, totally overwhelmed by it all. And those are the big questions, aren't they? Like, beyond all the breaking news and the scary headlines, what's really happening? What are the mechanics behind all of this? And really, why should you care? Well, that's exactly what we're here to do, to cut through the noise and bring a little bit of clarity to the chaos.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. You know, huge conflicts almost never just pop up out of nowhere. It's not like that. There's a process, a slow buildup that's often happening right under the surface. And a lot of times nobody really notices until it's way too late.
I want you to think of it like a tectonic plate, a fault line deep in the earth. The pressure just builds up so slowly, so silently, sometimes for years or even decades. And that right there, that's tension. It's this deep foundation of unresolved problems just waiting for something to make it all crack. And here's the really important part. These roots of tension, they're never just one thing. Look at how they get all tangled up. You've got a historical beef over some land, which then feeds into a modern political fight, and that gets cranked up to 11 by economic pressure. It's this incredibly complex, messy web that makes the whole situation so volatile.
So you have all this pressure, all this tension, and all it needs is one tiny spark. We call that the trigger. And this event, it might look pretty small on its own, maybe even insignificant. But when it lands on top of years and years of pressure, whoosh, it can ignite an absolute inferno.
And once that trigger is pulled, things happen fast. It's like a chain reaction, right? One move leads to retaliation. That retaliation is seen as a bigger move, which then leads to an even stronger response. And just like that, before you can even blink, other countries start getting pulled in, and what started as a local problem explodes into a full-blown international crisis.
And today, in the 21st century, this whole process happens at lightning speed. It's like pouring gasoline on the fire. We have military tech that can strike literally anywhere on the globe in minutes. We have cyber warfare that can shut down a country's power grid. We have a 24/7 news cycle that just never, ever sleeps. And on top of all that, we have these complex global alliances, where an attack on one country is basically an attack on all of its friends.
Okay, so once that fire is lit, it just doesn't stay put. It creates this massive ripple effect, sending shockwaves all around the planet. Because here's the bottom line. In today's world, no major conflict is ever just a local issue.
Yeah, in this super connected world we live in, it's a huge mistake to think a conflict is just something happening over there. It always, and I mean always, has a direct, tangible impact right here. We're talking about your wallet, your home, and yeah, even your own peace of mind.
So where do we feel it first? Well, usually it's at the gas pump. It's the most obvious one, right? A conflict kicks off in a big energy-producing part of the world, and that instantly creates a ton of uncertainty. And guess what uncertainty does? It drives global oil prices way up for everybody. And you can bet Wall Street feels it too. I mean, if there is one thing financial markets absolutely hate, it's unpredictability. And war, that's about as unpredictable as it gets. So investors get super nervous, and that triggers this huge volatility. You see markets just plunging or soaring based on a single headline.
And all of that, it eventually trickles right down to you, and it's called inflation. See, higher energy prices and all that market chaos means it costs way more to make things and to ship them. And that extra cost, it gets passed directly to us when we're standing at the checkout line.
This points to another really big weak spot, our global supply chain. Just think about it. So many of the things we use every single day travel through this unbelievably complex network. A conflict in just one key area can shut down a major shipping route or stop a factory from making parts, and boom, suddenly there are shortages and delays for all of us.
But the impact goes way beyond money and supply chains. There's also the psychological toll. The stress from being constantly bombarded with news about conflict, that's just as real, even if it's a lot harder to see.
I mean, this non-stop fire hose of bad news, it can really mix up this cocktail of emotions inside you, right? You've got anxiety about what's coming next, fear for the people involved, anger about the injustice of it all, and just this general feeling of uncertainty. It is absolutely emotionally exhausting.
And when we're that exhausted, we're vulnerable. You have to remember, today, information itself is a battlefield.
Misinformation is designed to spread like wildfire, specifically because it's engineered to hack our emotions. So what's the antidote? The only thing that really works is to just slow down, think critically, and really try to focus on verified information, not just gut reactions.
Okay, so given how messy and complicated all of this is, how do these things actually end? For our last section here, let's take a look at the role that global powers play and what the different paths to resolution might look like.
You know, most of the big global powers, they really want to avoid getting into a direct military fight. So instead, they use a different set of tools. They'll use things like sanctions to create economic pain. They'll try to get negotiations going to find some kind of diplomatic way out. Or they'll provide support to one side to try and steer the final outcome. All things they can do without putting their own soldiers in harm's way.
When you boil it all down, a conflict usually ends up going in one of three main directions. First, it could keep escalating, just pulling more and more countries into the fight. Second, it could just settle into a long, grinding stalemate where nobody really wins. Or third, and this is the hope, the different sides can finally come to the table and hammer out some kind of negotiated peace. And that, right there, is the really sobering part of all this. Because history shows us that negotiation is almost always how these things end. The real tragic question is always, how much has to be lost before we finally get there? The road to that negotiating table can be just devastatingly costly, both in human lives and in resources.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Look, we can't control these massive global events on our own, but what we can control is how we respond to them. And by understanding the mechanics of it all, the tension, the triggers, those global ripples we talked about, we can start to replace that gut reaction of fear with a much more grounded, helpful sense of awareness.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In a world like ours, where we're all so tightly connected by the economy, by the internet, by just being human, is it even possible anymore for any conflict to truly be someone else's problem? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.